Hi, Glenkirk Church parents, Pastor Tim Peck here. What a strange time this is for us to raise kids, with school starting remotely, with Sunday school in Awana not currently meeting in person. I know the weight that you're carrying as a parent is a heavy one. And here at Glenkirk, we're working hard on how we can partner with you in the spiritual growth of your kids. And our team is thinking outside the box how we can engage kids of all ages. And you'll be hearing more about those efforts in the days ahead. I know thinking about investing in the spiritual formation of our kids can be overwhelming at times. Where do we find time in our already busy schedule? What if they ask a question I don't know the answer to? Will it hurt my kids if they know that I struggle in my spiritual life sometimes? Parents can often feel inadequate and unprepared. One of my favorite verses about parents helping their kids grow in their faith is found in Deuteronomy chapter 6. Earlier in the chapter, it focuses on Israel's call to love God with all of their heart, with all of their soul, and with all of their might. And then in Deuteronomy chapter 6, verses 6 and 7, it says this: "These commandments that I give you today are to be on your hearts. Impress them on your children. Talk about them when you sit at home, when you walk along the road, when you lie down, and when you get up." I love this passage because it doesn't tell us to do anything new in our already busy schedules. Instead, it invites us to engage in the spiritual development of our kids as we go through the ordinary routines of everyday life. That as we allow God's word to sit in our own hearts, this passage invites us to then impress that on our kids. And the Hebrew word for impress here, it means to reiterate or to repeat. In other words, we reiterate what we ourselves are learning about God from God's word in words and terms that our kids can understand at their particular age level. This passage encourages us to do this as we go about the ordinary routines of life, as we're hanging out at home getting ready to watch Netflix, or as we're driving to a soccer practice or to a music lesson. To talk about these things as we're helping our kids get ready for bed at night, and as we're helping them get ready as they wake up in the morning. It doesn't have to be a big production or an in-depth Bible study. It's just being open and transparent about what we ourselves are learning with our kids. Most of my kids are grown and living on their own. Between Cindy and I, out of our 9 kids that we have together, only one is still at home. And some of my favorite memories of my kids growing up are these kinds of conversations. Conversations about God that took place in the ebb and flow of everyday life. And I found that these little conversations add up in big ways over time. As my kids began to get older into their teenage years, I became more vulnerable with them about my own struggles in my spiritual life, my struggles to pray consistently, or things that I found difficult to understand in the Bible. And as I was vulnerable with them, I found they became more vulnerable with me. And because of that, as they've entered into adulthood and starting to work through their own questions of faith, I'm often the very first person they turn to with those questions. I still remember my son, who was in the Navy, when he was on leave in Dubai, calling me because he had questions about the Bible, because he had met someone who was of a different religious tradition than he was raised with. I remember one of my son, who fancied himself an agnostic for a couple of years, once telling me, "Dad, you're the only person I can have this kind of conversation with." And over time, he worked through those doubts and found his way back to faith. All of those little moments when they were young talking about God's Word as we sat at home and as we were along the road, as we went to bed and as we woke up in the morning. Those little conversations added to a surplus of trust and relationship for me to continue helping them in their spiritual formation today. So parents, don't be intimidated or overwhelmed. Talk to your kids about your faith. Yes, encourage them to participate in the opportunities our kids' ministry and students' ministries put together during this season. But don't forget to share your own spiritual journey with them. This is how we pass our faith on to the next generation. God bless you during this season, and thanks for listening.